So the main purpose of my visit here today is to help dispel some of the misconceptions that folks across the city have about how to sort their refuse. And the most important thing to know is that we are trying to avoid missorted items in any of these three streams, what we call contamination. I'm so sorry, how can I go to the next page?
It should just.
That's okay.
No, let me just, what's clicking through looking for? Oh no, Mercury is, not our friend right now, and it usually isn't interrupted. Let me just see if we can. Get back. Oh, of course, you're saying.
Well, perhaps we might be able to start with some questions, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
All right, well, do we have any idea as to where, I have a question for you. I'm gonna start with a question for you. Where do plastic bags and film go? Do you all have any idea as to where soft plastics go?
I would put them in the blue bin.
You know, that was right about 2 years ago. Unfortunately, we are no longer accepting any forms of soft plastic in the recycling. But now that we have our lovely visual aid, perhaps I can help explain it with that.
Excellent.
So, contamination, that's what we want to avoid. That's what happens when, for example, an apple winds up in the trash or a plastic bag winds up in the recycling, right? These items are missorted and they shouldn't go into that bin. So we're just trying to make sure everybody is understanding how to sort their refuse correctly. So let's start with the recycling and we'll loop back around to those plastic bags. That's the most important thing. There is no such thing as a recyclable plastic bag, even if it's blue, even if it has the recycling symbol on it. In our system, it has to go into the black/gray landfill container. The reason that these bags are labeled with these recycling-esque symbols is to confuse you, right? So somebody is standing to benefit a whole lot from people believing that soft plastic film, such as plastic bags, is recyclable. It's not. And it likely won't ever be, at least in our current understanding of the industry. There's no money in recycling soft plastics. So in our world, especially in the United States, if it doesn't make money, it doesn't make sense, right? DJ Quick, 1995. But anyway, we unfortunately have to wrap our heads around the fact that soft plastic is trash. So cellophane, film, styrofoam, bags, any kind of soft plastic wrap is trash, and it should go immediately into the trash. We can't even allow good recycling bagged within plastic bags. So we need to make sure that everything that goes into the blue bin is loose. No plastic bags whatsoever. However, if you want to use a paper bag, that's totally fine. And you can go ahead and fill a paper bag up with aluminum cans and place those materials together into the blue bin. No problem there. All right. In addition to absolutely no plastic bags and no plastic film in the recycling, I have a couple other disclaimers. We don't want any food in here. That's of course compostable. And please no liquids. There actually aren't any liquids allowed in any of the three bins, so no liquid in recycling, trash, or compost. But let's talk about the materials we do want to see in there. And I'd like to start off with aluminum. I just heard a can being opened. It's music to my ears because aluminum cans are wonderfully recyclable, as is all aluminum products, including aluminum paper. If you don't mind, make a ball with that aluminum foil. That way we're able to recoup the material. If you don't make a ball, our magnets can't pick it up. So please do make a ball with that aluminum foil. It's okay if it has a little bit of salsa on it from that burrito you were eating. We'll smelt that material and the food will burn off harmlessly and we'll be able to recoup the aluminum. And what's really, really interesting about aluminum in particular is we are going to save 98% of the energy that we would have expended by going into the mines and getting more aluminum out of the earth. So it is the very best thing you can recycle. Aluminum in any form. Metals in general are very recyclable. So if you have a steel can that you have some soup in, yeah, give it a rinse and we can recycle that too. Metals are very, very recyclable. Yes?
I've seen a tin foil that has like a paper material on one side and the foil on the other side. Is that misrepresented as aluminum and it's really plastic? Or
You know, that's a really good question. Typically, when we have two materials stuck together, I would recommend that it goes into the trash. Um, Unfortunately, I think that's the way we should go here. Yeah. Good rule of thumb is if there are two materials stuck together, it's trash, even if one of them is recyclable. All right. Okay, so aluminum cans, wonderful. They're just so recyclable. Make sure that they're empty, please. So go ahead and finish your Coca-Cola or pour it out. All right, well, let's move along to another kind of container. We absolutely love glass bottles and jars, but they're the only kind of glasses that we can take. So please make sure that you rinse them out quickly and dump out the liquid. We can recycle that. But the issue, I like to use the example of a glass peanut butter jar, right? Because peanut butter is quite viscous and it's going to be a little difficult for us to wash it out in order for that container to be recyclable. Well, in a perfect system, I would ask that you take 10 minutes to, fill this container up with hot water, leave it on the desk, come back, and dump out that liquid and recycle the clean container. If you don't have time to do that, what would be best would be to place these two materials into the trash, right? If we don't have time to separate, it's better to not contaminate the recycling and the compost. The recycling and the compost are very easily contaminated, whereas the trash is a little bit harder to contaminate. So I don't want this to be a mantra that you walk out of here chanting, but when in doubt, you can trash it out. Of course, I'd prefer if you look up our sorting guidelines on Google, but let's say you don't have internet connection, you're in a pinch, you're in a time crunch, yes, you can go ahead and put that peanut butter jar full of peanut butter, into the trash. But let's return to the recycling. So only glass bottles and jars. We don't want drinking glasses. So I like to use the example of a wine bottle, extremely recyclable. But a wine glass, a drinking glass, is actually trash. It's made with a little bit of lead to make it nice and durable, but that means that it has a higher melting point, and we can unfortunately not recycle it along with the bottles and jars. So when a wine glass breaks, we're going to put that in the trash. If we have an empty wine bottle, we can always recycle that. And we don't need the glass to be full. It can be broken. You can have a broken wine glass and still recycle that. I'm so sorry, a broken wine bottle and still recycle that. The glasses have to go into the trash, of course. All right, let's move along to paper. We absolutely love all kinds of paper in the recycling, as long as it is clean and dry. So that is going to be a very important point. Any kind of paper, including cardboard, newspaper, even softcover books, will allow all of that as long as it is clean and dry in the recycling. Where we don't want these kind of materials anymore in the recycling is when they're wet or covered in food. So I like to use the example of a pizza box. A clean pizza box is perfectly fine in the recycling. In fact, it's better in the recycling because we're going to be able to recoup that fibrous material a whole lot quicker than in the compost. But following contamination with food or liquid, all of a sudden those fibers start to break down, and it's better in the compost, right? I think the idea here is that it's ideal to recycle your paper. It's a quicker turnaround. What we're going to do is we're going to make a big slurry, a smoothie, a milkshake, and all of for example, the little staples in your magazine, they'll float to the bottom, and we'll scoop those out. And all the little bits of paper on your cardboard box, the plastic on your cardboard boxes, the pieces of tape, that'll float to the top, we'll scoop that out. Then we can reclaim the fibrous material, make more paper, more cardboard. Whereas if we put that paper into the compost, it's going to be soil amendment, and we're going to have to ship it to a farmer. We're going to have to plant a seed. We're going to have to wait till that seed grows into a tree. We're going to have to cut that tree down, harvest it, process it into paper. So better to put clean paper into the recycling. But of course, if it's already wet, already soiled, it is compost. Let's talk about probably the most confusing items on our list here today. They're in the top left and bottom right corners. We have some new materials in the recycling that previously were in the compost. So those include our ice cream containers, our single-use coffee cups, our Tetra Paks, fancy word for juice boxes, and our paper milk containers. The issue with these is that they all have a little plastic inlay that's no good in the compost. So please make sure to put these materials now, when they are empty, into the recycling. Now, last but not least, we do allow hard, rigid plastic in the recycling. Is it truly recyclable? Not really. It's downcyclable. So we're going to be able to take this Tupperware container or a Gatorade bottle, and we're going to recycle it once, it'll come back to us as a plastic bag, which then goes to the landfill, which is why I was so appreciative of Patty here when she gave me a tote bag, right? Tote bags are such a wonderful workaround. We don't have to accept plastic waste into our lives if we have, a reusable item. So I always want to remind people that while recycling is great, it's not the end all be all. There is a process here that we should follow before we get to recycling. That being, I want us to say no to single-use materials, reuse the materials we already have until they break, and at that point, we can consider recycling them. All right, well, let's go ahead and see if there are any questions about the recycling. It is the most difficult to understand because here in the United States, we have a commingled recycling. So all of these recyclable materials, they all go into the blue bin, which is very different. If you've been to Japan, they have 5 different bins for the recycling, one for glass, one for aluminum, one for paper, etc. So I'm wondering if we have any questions about the materials we see here, the materials we want and do not want in the recycling. Yes.
Yeah, so for aluminum cans, like soup cans, you like take the top off, the lid off. That lid, it's like sharp around the edges. Is that also recyclable? Should you put that part in the trash? What if it's still kind of attached to the top of the can? What's
Great
the
question.
go-to?
Absolutely. It would be better if it was attached to the can. It's still recyclable, even if it's just the lid itself, even if it's sharp. That's perfectly fine. Our garbage men wear Kevlar gloves, which is the same material used to stop bullets. So it's luckily their hands are pretty safe. There are other issues, of course, with the trash, chemicals and materials that nobody wants to touch or even get near. But luckily, they can deal with sharps. Oh yes, we have another one.
I have a question about caps on plastic, like Gatorade, etc. Sometimes I see people with them on, sometimes off. What's the, yeah.
Yeah, that's a difficult question
Yeah.
because over in Oakland, they tell you that they don't want any bottle caps on the bottles. Here we do. So if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and screw that Coca-Cola cap back onto the Coca-Cola bottle and recycle it empty. We're going to be able to capture that material better. The issue is that we don't really have the capacity to capture small pieces of recyclable material. So we have this amazing conveyor belt system to separate all of the recyclable materials into bales, right? So the conveyor belt will separate metal from plastic from paper. Unfortunately, the conveyor belt, it runs on gears and small materials fall through the literal cracks in our system and they fall onto the floor and we scoop them up and we put them in the trash. So yes, if you could screw those bottle caps back onto the bottle, we have a better chance of capturing it. Wonderful question, thank you. Yes.
So, when did it change where you put the coffee cups in the recycling?
Sure, that changed
Yeah.
about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. So yeah, in the past, you probably saw them in the compost, right? And there still are compostable coffee cups. The difference is they're going to be labeled compostable. So the grand majority of these containers with the plastic inlay, unless they're clearly labeled compostable, you can go ahead and put them in the recycling. That being said, if you go to Pete's, I believe they do have compostable coffee cups. So we'll get to this in just a minute, but the term compostable is a legally binding word here in California. If it says compostable, we legally have to accept it in the compost, and it's been certified by a company, BPI, to be able to break down within 120 days, so it can be part of our compost system. So yes, if you're interested in using compostable plastics, just make sure you're not falling victim to plastics that claim to be compostable but don't say that they are compostable. These plastics say that they are biodegradable or plant-based or corn-based. That is a bit of a loophole. We don't accept those in our system. We need it to say compostable, which is probably a good segue to the compost, right? But before we go there, maybe we can take a look at a contaminated recycling, just to have an example here. So we already talked about how plastic isn't truly recyclable. This is just another example here. Plastic can be turned into synthetic fibers or plastic bags, and that's it. And then it goes to the trash. So of course, aluminum, glass, paper, far more recyclable. Let's get past this. Here we have a contaminated recycling, right? We have food material, we have wet paper, and this would invalidate our ability to recycle large quantities of the material in the blue bin, right? So if the food were to cover the paper. The paper's fibers would start to break down and we could no longer recycle it. Same thing with water. So this is obviously incorrect. If we can please make sure that the bottles are empty before we place them in the recycling, and the food and any food-touched paper goes to the compost. All right, moving swiftly along here, we have another example of what we don't want to see in the recycling. So this is two issues going on here. On the right, we have an overfilled recycling bin. This may result in additional charges. So we definitely don't want to incur that. And if we're regularly seeing that any of the bins are overfilled, what we might need is an additional bin. So give me a call if you see that, and we can set up service. On the left, we have the most common example of mistakes in the recycling, and this is simply plastic bagged recyclables, right? So you can be a wonderful you can have the best practices in terms of collecting your recyclable items, but if they're inside of a plastic bag, they go to the trash in our system. Our folks are simply going to grab it off the recycling line and throw it in the trash. So we need to make sure that folks are aware that they have to put the recycling loose, no plastic bags. That's going to be the most important thing that we talk about here. So if you could actually spread that information with your friends, family, community, and loved ones, that would be incredibly helpful. It seems like there's still a lot of confusion regarding this in the city of San Francisco. Okay, well, moving along here, let's go ahead and talk about my favorite of the three streams, the compost. The compost is a full circle in a way that the recycling isn't. So 70% of the recycling that you put into the blue bin will be recycled, which is great. It's a lot higher of a number than a lot of folks like to say. Well, the compost is even better. 100% of the materials that you put into the green bin are going to come back to you in the form of produce or wine made with that produce, right? So this is the best way to mitigate climate change, in my opinion. We sequester carbon every time we compost. And every time we don't compost, we allow all that carbon to escape into the atmosphere faster at an enormous rate, actually. So the worst thing you could ever possibly do with food is put it into the trash. What happens when food goes to the trash is all that carbon that would be sequestered in the soil goes straight up to perpetuate the greenhouse effect. So if you're an environmentalist, if you're simply somebody who cares about leaving the city better than you found it, if you have children, we should all be composting. It is probably the most important thing, the most impactful thing we can do to combat climate change on a daily basis. All right, well, let's talk about the materials we don't want, and then we'll get into the materials that we do want. So again, we don't want any liquids. If you could go ahead and drink your coffee before we deposit the grounds into the compost, that'd be great. In addition, obviously, no plastic bags unless they're clearly labeled compostable. And one more thing, no glass. So I know that glass does come from nature, but we simply can't allow glass in our compost because when we sell this compost to farmers or for example, to be used in a soccer field for children, it cannot have glass in it. That would risk, we can't have little kids with bleeding feet. And what's even worse is we found that materials grown with compost that has glass in it, it could very well get into the food system. So, cows walking along a pasture with glass in the soil, they'll cut their little hooves, and they could even eat some of that soil and cut their intestines. So very, very, very important that we don't put any glass in the compost. If we do, that would become trash because it's just completely unacceptable. We couldn't pass that along. Okay, well, now that we got that out of the way, let's talk about the good materials that we love to see in the compost. And basically, that is anything that comes from Mother Nature. With one exception, we don't want any fecal material in here. So, of course, in nature, out there in the big wide world, yes, fecal material is an important part of compost. And in fact, if you're a gardener like me and you go to Orchard Garden Supply, you buy a bag of soil amendment and it's full of chicken manure. You see, in the city of San Francisco, we are not quite there yet. So if you have a dog, a cat, or a little baby at home, all that fecal material can go into the trash. Okay, everything else that comes from Mother Nature is perfect in the compost, right? So any kind of food waste, food scraps, yard scraps. Basically, that's it. But we'll go through it real quick. So any kind of food, hard and soft, chicken bones to gelatin, totally fine in the compost. We love coffee filters. We love coffee grounds. Eggshells are fine. Oh, okay, let's loop back around to our conversation about soiled paper. So clean paper goes into the recycling, soiled paper goes into the compost. So we have here the wonderful example that I already used of the pizza box. Here it is full of marinara, anchovies, pepperonis. I don't know what kind of toppings you typically order on your pizza, but they have contaminated this box, and this box is no longer recyclable. Now it's compostable. You can also go ahead and do the same with any kind of hand drying paper, so paper towels. The next time you dry your hands, you can go ahead and put that paper towel used into the compost. The next time you blow your nose on a Kleenex, you can go ahead and put that paper into the compost. Additionally, low quality paper is actually better in the compost, so this includes egg cartons, usually packaging material. So low quality paper it's your choice. If you have more space in the compost, it can go there. If you have more space in the recycling, it can go there. We have here in the bottom right hand of our screen a paper takeout box, and this is probably going to be one of the more confusing items that we discuss about the compost. I mentioned previously that there are materials that even after being soiled are better in the recycling, the coffee cup, the Tetra Pak, the milk box. These have plastic inlays, and every once in a while you're going to find that these paper takeout boxes also have plastic inlays. How can you check? Something called a tear test. So the next time you, for example, go to Starbucks, I encourage you to drink your coffee, and before you throw it into a container, try and tear the cup. If it does not tear, or if it's very hard to tear, it has a plastic inlay. This would make it better in the recycling. If it tears easily, if there is obviously only fibrous material in there, it's fine in the compost. I think as a rule of thumb, you can go ahead and put most coffee cups into the recycling. And if it says compost, well, legally binding term, you can put it in the compost. Okay, so go ahead, next time you go to Starbucks, the next time you get a paper takeout container, give it a tear. If it doesn't tear, better in the recycling. If it does tear, you can throw it and your chicken bones away into the compost. And last but not least, let's talk a little bit more about compostable plastics. They are real, they are valid, and you can continue to use them. We found that folks participate more in our compost when we allow them to use compostable plastics. So if that would help you compost, I highly encourage it. However, I have a couple of tips of my own. So these cost money. Compostable plastics are not cheap. What I use is a little paper bag. I fill it up with compost. I put it in my freezer. There is no smell. There are no bugs. And you've mitigated all of those issues that prevent people from participating in the compost. So if you have any friends, family, loved ones who say, you know, I would love to compost, but I live in a studio apartment, you can tell them about me and my little workaround. So yes, it's going to be very important that we find workarounds and ways to participate in the compost because again, it's probably the best way to combat climate change. All right, of course you can put your dead flowers into the compost, as well as if you have a yard, lucky you, you can go ahead and mow the grass and go ahead and put all that grass into the compost too. What we don't want in the compost, rocks and very heavy material. A lot of the compost, a lot of the food is very moisture laden. That makes it very heavy. So we don't want to overburden the compost, please. Make sure that you can lift it. If you can't lift it, maybe our garbage men can't lift it either. So we need to make sure that it is more or less unburdened. Okay, let's move along here. Have an example for you of a contaminated compost. And I like this picture. It seems like somebody was trying, right? There's not too much contamination in it. And this is oftentimes how the compost looks. Lots of folks trying and a couple of folks trying incorrectly, right? So aluminum foil, of course, if we take that off the burrito, ball it up, we could recycle it. The plastic film, that is trash. Other than that, this looks like pretty good compost. So, you know, if I were to see this during a site visit, I would congratulate the folks for at least attempting the compost, correct their behaviors, and say, now you're set for success. And I hope to see wonderful compost from you in the future. All right, moving on here. We have gotten to my least favorite of the three streams, and in a well-sorted system, the least voluminous. So in a well-sorted system, we would like to see the recycling be 60% of your refuse stream, the compost be 30%, and trash only 10%. So That is why, if you live in San Francisco, you'll probably notice that your trash cans have been shrinking over the past couple of years. They went from 96 to 64 to 32 to 16 gallons. And that's the reason for that, is that truly most of your refuse is not actually belonged in the trash. So we want the recycling and compost to be where the majority of your refuse goes. But what happens when we have plastic bags, fecal material? It goes to the landfill. So, for example, your Frito-Lays, your chip bags, styrofoam bags, film, plastics, all of that can go into the landfill. All PPE can go into the landfill. All feminine hygiene products can go to the landfill. All diapers can go to the landfill. And this one threw me for a loop, so I'll let you know. Ceramics are not recyclable. So the next time you break a coffee cup or a dinner plate, please do put that into the landfill. Now, that being said, ceramics still fit in nicely to the hierarchy of sustainability, which is reduce, reuse, recycle. They're reusable. So as long as an item is reusable, it doesn't necessarily have to be recyclable for you to be doing your part for the environment, right? The idea here is that that coffee cup costs a whole lot less energy to produce than 1,000 single-use paper coffee cups, right? So if we can reuse that single ceramic coffee cup 1,000 times, our expenditure of energy is going to be so much lower than it would be if we used single-use items. So perhaps the most important thing to take away from that is that single-use is not the way to go, right? Even the most recyclable single-use items are not the most environmentally friendly. The best thing to do is reuse. So to that point, I would say tote bags, thermoses. Take your thermos to Starbucks next time, right? Have them fill up your thermos. Use that same coffee cup until it breaks. The same with all of your cutlery and plates and all that good stuff. We live in a throwaway culture, and we don't have the capacity to recycle a lot of that stuff. So the longer you hold on to it, the longer you can keep it out of the landfill. Oh, and I'll also say this, I don't mean to depress you, but I think it's important to realize what the landfill is. The landfill is a big hole out by Vacaville where we throw all the trash in, we cover it with dirt, and then we forget about it. And we have no plan to do anything with that for the foreseeable future. And that's bad for the water table, that's bad for the environment. Of course, California has highly sophisticated landfills. They have lots of techniques that we're utilizing in order to prevent that from happening. But landfill is the worst option, right? It is not a good solution. It's not a sustainable solution. So by recycling and by composting, we are not allowing materials to be sent to the landfill. And we're hopefully going to reuse the majority of these until infinitely. That's the hope. That's the hope. Yeah, we have a question.
How about packing popcorn?
Packing popcorn, great. So that is styrofoam, almost always. So unfortunately, that is trash. Now, good news about styrofoam is that we've essentially banned it in the city of San Francisco. I remember when I was growing up, you used to go and every cup came in styrofoam, right? So Jamba Juice styrofoam, McDonald's styrofoam. No longer the case, which is wonderful. Now we're trying to ban plastic bags, and we actually did a few years back. The plastic companies found a little workaround. They made the bags thicker and reusable. That's not really the case. So unfortunately, we're still fighting the plastic bag ban. There should be a new ban implemented in 2027 if the bill passes. I'm hoping that that's the case. Fingers crossed. Any more questions regarding the trash? And we can always loop back around if we have more at the end. Let's go ahead and take a look at a contaminated trash can, and then we'll come back to one more point about the trash. So here we have food waste in the trash, we have hard, rigid plastic in the trash that could have been recycled, and we have, let's see, it looks like an egg carton, right? And depending on whether or not you have space in your recycling or compost, you could put it in either of those. So this, I don't think, would constitute a charge. We would require at least 25% of the materials by volume to be missorted in the trash for it to incur contamination fees. So the good news is, I don't think what we see here is sufficient. And that is why I encourage you to focus on the recycling and the compost, because they're far easier to contaminate and incur charges on. And of course, the recycling and the compost are the most ecologically friendly ways to participate in our program anyway. So that's our focus, and I'd like that to be your focus too. let's loop back around to, we were discussing a little bit ago when we have two materials stuck together. One is recyclable, one is not. What do? We put it in the trash, unfortunately. So that's going to be basically all of your Amazon mailers, right? On the outside, they look like they're paper. On the inside, they have bubble wrap. Bubble wrap is not okay in the recycling, soft plastic. And unfortunately, a lot of the times they will be labeled with these recycling labels. So the recycling symbol is not as trustworthy as we have come to believe, unfortunately. Perhaps I can talk a little bit about the resin identification symbol. So I'm not sure if any of you are aware what a resin identification symbol is. That is the recycling symbol that you're often finding on your plastics. So if it has a number inside of the chasing arrows, that's no longer a recycling symbol. That is a resin identification symbol that looks suspiciously like a recycling symbol, perhaps to confuse people. I don't know. Anyway, a resin identification symbol simply means that it's made of plastic 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And only certain versions of those plastics, 1, 2, and 5, I believe, are actually recyclable. So that's very unfortunate. So here in the city of San Francisco, if I could actually return to the recycling, I want to make sure that we are aware it doesn't need, I don't want you to look for a recycling symbol, right? In our program, we're going to accept any piece of hard, rigid plastic that can stand by itself, regardless of whether or not it has a recycling symbol on it. So your Tupperware containers, your takeout containers, your water bottles, your Gatorade bottles, any kind of hard, rigid plastic, you can put directly into the recycling. So I understand that we've come to rely on this symbol quite a lot, and I think we're going to have to unlearn that because it's not been very helpful recently, unfortunately. So please don't trust the recycling symbol, trust the rigidity of plastic. That is how we recycle, and that is how we want to ask you to sort your recycling. Okay, well, I think we have had a pretty comprehensive little talk here. Do we have any more questions? Yes, and then 2.
On cooking oil, should that just go into landfill?
Great question. So we have certain materials that shouldn't actually go into any of the 3 streams. We have a hazardous waste pickup program. So if you have cooking oil, engine oil, any hazardous chemical, we'd ask that you call Recology, and we will come to your business and we'll pick it up for you. And the same would apply to electronic waste. So if you have, for example, an old projector or an old television or an old printer, if you could give us a call, we'll come and take that off your hands. Additionally, we have a bulky item pickup program, which you're probably aware of. That is, if you're trying to get rid of 10 tables, you know, if you're trying to get rid of large materials that won't fit anywhere else, you can ask Recology for a bulky item pickup. So for residents of San Francisco, that's actually all of those 3 extra pickups. They're for free once per year. So if you live in the city, utilize this. I highly recommend you schedule a bulky item pickup to get rid of all that junk that you've been acquiring. Or, you know, let's say you have a lot of engine oil. My brother likes to change his own engine oil, and then he has no idea what to do with it. Well, call Recology. We'll take it off your hands. So yes, thank you so much. Wonderful question. There are certainly items that we don't want in any of these 3 streams. And if I could draw special attention to batteries, we should have a battery bucket here. If we don't, I can get one sent out. It's this orange bucket that we place our batteries in. And the reason that's so important to have is batteries are a huge fire hazard, lithium ion more than any other. And I've actually seen fires started both in garbage trucks and at our recycling facility due to compressed batteries. They're just huge fire starters. So please make sure that you're placing your batteries in a battery bucket. If you do not have access to a battery bucket, please go ahead, place them in a clear plastic bag, like a sandwich bag, on top of the trash receptacle, on the lid, on top of the lid, not inside. And that way our garbage man will be able to separate it and recycle it. The interesting thing about batteries is that they're actually highly recyclable. They're just also highly dangerous. So we need to collect them in a little different of a way. Okay, another question, yes?
Fabrics, like
Fabrics, love to hear it. In the past, we had tried to recycle them, and we found that they tangled up the gears in our recycling system. So I would highly recommend you go to the Salvation Army or the Goodwill, or even better, you know, I live in the Tenderloin, and there's folks walking around looking cold all the time. If you have an extra jacket, maybe just pass it out on the street. If that's outside of your comfort level, I absolutely understand. Just ideas.
Like scrap.
Scraps, I love scraps. Oh my God, I grew up going to scrap. Yes, so be creative about how to reduce, reuse, recycle, right? I am by no way, shape, or form asking you to go directly through me or my company. If you have an orange tree in your backyard and it's too many oranges for you to eat, you know, what's a creative solution to get these oranges to people who can consume them? Yeah, maybe we could set a cardboard box in front of our house on the stoop, free oranges. Pick a couple, right? Let's say we have a TV that we're no longer interested in. Hey, Grandma, do you want to upgrade your TV? I have a TV for you. There's a lot of ways that we can spread the love, right? So reduce, reuse, and then recycle. I'm hoping that there are creative solutions to the majority of our items that we're trying to get rid of. Which actually, I have a little slide for us, so perhaps we can go to the very end here. This is a fun slide. So I live on the border of like 3 different neighborhoods, right? The Tenderloin, Chinatown, Nob Hill. So I eat a lot of Chinese takeout, and they come in these little black takeout containers with the see-through lids. Well, that's my lunchbox until it breaks, right? So I'll rinse it out, and I'll put my sandwich in there, and I'll take it to work. So that's a way to reuse a material that would otherwise be recycled once and then go to the landfill. Plastic bags, I don't know about you, but I thought that they were recyclable too up until about 2 years ago. So I have thousands of plastic bags that I have acquired, and they're currently under my sink. What do you do with these? Well, maybe you can line your trash bin with them. Maybe you don't have to buy a trash bag. Or if you have a dog, maybe you can pick up the dog waste with this plastic bag, right? So get creative. On the right here, we have a solution that I've never personally implemented, but hey, if you're a big drinker of orange juice, perhaps you'd be able to reuse those containers to contain other material, right? Be creative. There's no wrong answer there. And of course, probably even more importantly, is just saying no to single-use items, right? So a water bottle, a thermos, right? A reusable water bottle is of course better than a single-use water bottle. Maybe we could bring metal utensils to work and then take them home and wash them. It would be better to buy a large container of soy sauce as opposed to little plastic packets. Of course, a thermos is better than a single-use coffee cup, and a tote bag is better than a plastic bag. So just little ways that we can each do our part to improve. Now, of course, I don't want to make you think that it is entirely upon you. I think that a lot of responsibility lies with the producers of this plastic material. And if on that end you'd like to participate, I suppose we might all call our congressman and then write Nancy Pelosi a letter or something like that. But on our end, this is how we participate. So if you don't mind again, I'm gonna deputize all of you. Spread this information as far and as wide as you can, especially that plastic bag messaging, because folks still think they're recyclable. And I don't blame you, right? 2 years ago they were, and there hasn't been enough messaging out there in order to update everybody. So I'd appreciate it if we work as a team here and just get that message out there. All right, we also have, I am wondering if you have that battery bucket, or if I could get you one.
We do have a battery bucket. It's on the 4th floor.
Okay,
It's
perfect.
full of batteries.
Wonderful. Well, give Recology a call. We'll pick it up for free. That's completely free. Now, I'm wondering if you guys have ever seen Dirty Jobs with Mike Rowe on the Discovery Channel? Okay, yes, one. Well, Mike Rowe did a couple of videos with Recology, and I'd like to not show you one of Mike Rowe's videos, but perhaps a behind the scenes of how our recycling facility operates, because it is fascinating. And if you want to schedule a tour, I'd love to have you all visit the recycling facility. Once people see it in person through their own eyes, I think that people want to participate more. Once they realize how much effort and work goes into the recycling, they're more willing to be a part of it. So maybe we can take a little moment and watch a video about our recycling facility. If I can find it, that's going to be the important part. Where? Oh, it's at the very beginning. Here we are. There we go. All right, so I'm going to join the audience and we're going to watch a bit of a video. Is everybody okay with that? All right.
Welcome to the San Francisco Transfer Station and Recycling Center, operated by Recology San Francisco. Most people call us the dump, but the correct term is transfer station because everything received here is sent somewhere else, including recyclables, materials that can be composted, and landfill-bound materials. Our facility includes the Recology Organics Wing, which is where we receive and transfer compostable materials, the transfer station building, the IMRF, which is a sorting facility for construction and demolition materials, the public reuse and recycling area, the household hazardous waste facility, our art studios, and a 3-acre sculpture garden. The facility is also home to the largest private solar array in San Francisco, which generates more than 900,000 kilowatt hours of electricity per year, offsetting some of the electricity demand of our operations. In San Francisco, we have a 3-bin collection system. Glass jars and bottles, metal cans, clean paper and cardboard, empty cups and cartons, and rigid plastics go in the blue bin for recycling. Food scraps, food-soiled paper, and yard trimmings go in the green bin for curbside composting collection. And the black bin is for non-hazardous materials that can't be recycled or composted, such as chip bags, snack wrappers, broken ceramics, pet waste, and diapers. Recology Sunset Scavenger and Recology Golden Gate collect materials from all residential and commercial properties in San Francisco. A truck with 2 compartments picks up the landfill-bound materials and the compost. A metal divider runs through the body of the truck, keeping these streams separated at all times. A second truck picks up the materials in the blue recycling bin. This material goes to Recycle Central, a large sorting facility located on Pier 96. Using modern recycling equipment, including state-of-the-art optical sorters, in combination with hand sorting by recycling workers, we separate materials at Recycle Central into 14 to 18 different commodities. We bale and ship these materials to both domestic and foreign manufacturing facilities such as foundries, glass plants, and paper mills. Materials from your black bin go to the transfer station building. Since there is no landfill in San Francisco, we transport San Francisco's trash to a landfill near Vacaville, which is about 65 miles east of San Francisco. The transfer station building was constructed in 1970. It has 3 levels. Collection trucks empty materials from the black bin into a huge pit, which is about 15 feet deep. The floor of the pit is the middle level. A bulldozer runs over the material to break up and compact the materials. Then the bulldozer pushes the refuse to one end of the pit and over the edge into the transfer trailer that is parked below. When the truck is full, it drives to the landfill and is tipped so all the refuse slides out. Everything from your black bin goes into the pit and then to the landfill. These materials don't get sorted and they don't get recycled. The food scraps, food-soiled paper, and yard trimmings we collect from the green bin are handled separately. The compost collection trucks unload in the organics wing. This material is then loaded into transfer trailers used only for compostable materials and taken to composting facilities owned and operated by Recology. At these sites, food scraps, food-soiled paper, and yard trimmings are ground up, placed in aerated windrows, and covered with a biocape made of wood chips, improving the decomposition process. The material begins to compost within hours and becomes finished compost in about 60 days. Farms and vineyards throughout California use our compost as a soil amendment, reducing the need for chemical fertilizers and increasing water retention. When used to grow cover crops, like mustard, compost helps sequester carbon from the atmosphere deep into the soil where it can remain for 30 to 100 years. Construction companies can rent debris boxes when they build, renovate, or demolish buildings. Material is collected and sorted in our IMRF, which is a sorting facility for construction and demolition materials. Construction materials are loaded onto a conveyor belt where a shaker screen removes the small materials, such as small rocks and dirt, which are used as alternative daily cover at a landfill. Next, recycling workers pull off different types of material for recycling, such as cardboard, wood, metal, concrete, rigid plastic, and sheetrock. Sorted materials are transferred to various recycling facilities and made into new products. Concrete can be crushed and used for road base, and the gypsum found in sheetrock is added to compost as a soil amendment or can be recycled and made into new sheetrock. Anything that cannot be recycled is taken by the conveyors into the transfer station. At this time, materials that go into the transfer station are not sorted and will be taken to the landfill. The public reuse and recycling area, or what most people refer to as the dump, is where building contractors, landscapers, businesses, or the general public can come to discard materials. Customers weigh in at the scale, then after discarding their materials, they stop at our second scale to weigh out. Their fees are based on the difference between how much their truck weighed before and after they dumped. At the public reuse and recycling area, we pre-sort large items for recycling, such as sinks, appliances, tires, and mattresses. Electronic waste is also separated and recycled responsibly. We donate perfectly good items, such as furniture, to a network of thrift stores, saving approximately 10,000 items per year. After the pre-sort, workers separate other materials that can be recycled. Materials that can't be recycled or reused go to the landfill. Certain things cannot be dumped into the pit, the IMRF, or the public reuse and recycling area because they are potentially hazardous or banned from landfills. These are things such as fluorescent lights, household batteries, unwanted paint, used motor oil, home cleaning products, and other chemicals. Residents of San Francisco can take these items to our household hazardous waste collection facility for free or call for a special pickup. Materials collected are sent to sites in the United States that specialize in handling specific materials such as household batteries or oil-based paint. Latex paint is recycled on site. We give recycled paint to schools and community groups and have sent container loads to Mexico, Mali, El Salvador, Fiji, Tonga, and Zambia, where Recology employees have worked closely with local communities to paint schools, health clinics, and other public buildings. Recology also operates a waste acceptance control program, which inspects incoming materials to keep hazardous waste out of the trash, recycling, and compost. The program also provides emergency response services and supports recycling or disposal programs for batteries, fluorescent lamps, medical waste, and hazardous waste from qualifying local businesses. Recology has adopted innovative approaches when it comes to running our facility and getting the word out about resource conservation and recycling. Recology San Francisco's education program provides tours for over 4,000 children and adults annually, and the Artist in Residence program enables Bay Area artists to make work from what people in San Francisco throw away. Artists are selected annually through a jurying process, work in an on-site studio for approximately 4 months, and have access to materials in the public reuse and recycling area. Artwork is presented in public exhibitions, including in downtown office buildings and galleries, and is also located in our sculpture garden on the hill behind the transfer station. The program inspires people to think differently about resources and to consider their impact on the environment. Reducing, refusing, reusing, recycling, and composting are simple things we can all do every day and are truly effective at helping protect the environment. We hope you've enjoyed learning more about our company. In collaboration with the City of San Francisco, Recology will continue to do our part to increase diversion, educate the public about the importance of resource conservation, and inspire people to consume less and recycle more in order to preserve our fragile planet.
Alrighty, well, thank you all so very much for taking the time to come down here today and listen to me talk a little bit about the recycling, compost, and trash. I know that we're all probably quite busy, but I do want to give just a little bit more time. Maybe that video brought up some more questions or comments or concerns. Hey, anything is valid, you know, this is a safe space. Yes.
What about mail that has the little plastic window? Sorry if I missed.
No worries. You know, I think I touched upon the fact that we make a big milkshake out of a lot of our paper material. So in the same way that you don't have to take the tape off of your cardboard boxes, you don't have to take the little plastic mailer out of your mail. Yeah, we're going to do that on our own, where we're trying to make it easier for people to recycle. So yeah,
Thanks.
of course. Anybody else? Well, in that case, thank you so very much, and I hope you have a pleasant rest of your day.
happy to help.
We are still recording in case facilities wanted to come up and talk a little bit about Lost and Found. And I can talk a little bit about Ridwell after that. Yeah.
Cool, so I just wanted to briefly talk about Lost and Found. This is more so for students. We do get quite a lot of Lost and Found. Unfortunately, it is a lot of water bottles. So first and foremost, I would encourage anybody who has lost a water bottle to please come and talk to us about getting your water bottle back. We're changing a little bit how we're dealing with Lost and Found since the 4th floor reception desk is no longer permanently staffed. So we've moved our Lost and Found to be permanently housed in a facilities and operations storage room. It's safely stored, it's locked there. We ask that if you have lost something, that you send an email to facilities and business ops at CIIS.edu describing the item that you lost, and we will go and look for it. And if we have it, we will reach back out to you and let you know that we found it and where we can meet up to give you your lost item back. If you find something and would like to turn it into Lost and Found, we ask that you take it downstairs to the lobby reception desk. And we will take anything that has been found during the day and transport it up to our safe Lost and Found. If it is a valuable item, so if it's like a laptop or a phone, things like that, we are going to have that brought up to an office on the 5th floor, have that locked away, and again, we'll ask you to send an email to facilities and business ops describing your item, and so we can make sure it gets safely returned to you. For Lost and Found items that are not claimed, which is a lot of them, we will keep them for around a month. And if they've not been claimed by then, we, for water bottles, will clean them. For other items, we'll just bag them up and then we take them to the closest thrift store and donate them, so things are not being just thrown away. We're doing our best to you know, move that stuff on responsibly and not just put it in the landfill. But yes, we encourage everyone to please, if you have lost something, reach out to us. If you find something, give it to us. If you lost your $80 water bottle, please come and take it back. Yes, that's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'm just gonna quickly talk about Ridwell and our Ridwell project. So I'm gonna stop my share and reshare again. Because yes, and thank you, Adrian, again for the wonderful presentation. It's been absolutely wonderful. I learned so much, and that's the whole thing. We're all learning. We're all on the journey. So I'm just gonna share my screen fully. We started a Ridwell project in September, and Ridwell has something called Express. So Ridwell is essentially a company that's across much of the country. I have one in Alameda. I think Rachel Bryant, our Vice President of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, she has one in Oakland. And it's a little bin or bag, set of bags, and they will take things like your plastic bags or your multi-layer plastic. So anything that has a shiny inside, is really loud and crunchy when you scrunch it up, or your plastic bags and Ziplocs where you poke a hole through and it's a thin plastic. So in the cafe on the 3rd floor, which we're in right now, you'll find a multi-layer and a thin plastic bags. If you have a Ziploc or a plastic bag, you can put it in the thin plastic. If you have a plastic shiny, loud, scrunchy plastic material like that, you can put it in there.